Well, thank you, SIT. Thank you, organizing committee, for inviting me here. My name is Jingmei. I'm a scientist, so for the record, I'm not that kind of doctor. And usually when I give talks, I talk about how to save the world one breath at a time. But today, I'm going to talk about movies, especially science fiction. Now, there's a very thin line between fiction and science, and that's why we have science fiction. It's a crossover between the arts and the sciences, a literature of ideas, usually about the future, and typically very cool. And many of our predictions about the science of tomorrow comes in the form of science fiction. If we talk about science fiction, of course, we have to talk about the father of science fiction, Jules Verne. He was an author who predicted the future, a man ahead of his time, a seer. And he was credited with imagining technologies that wouldn't be invented for over a century. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Journey to the Center of the Earth, Around the World in 80 Days. His works have inspired movies and continue to inspire writers, readers, and even scientists today. But traditionally, science fiction always have had a very strong grounding in actual science. Before the Nautilus in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, there was already the American turtle. It looks more like an acorn or a strawberry than a modern-day submarine, but still it was the first underwater vehicle with documented use in combat. Now, the technology was there, the prototype was there, but it took the mind of a great sci-fi writer and the influence of movies to improve the design, to popularize the idea before we have modern-day submarines. Similarly, before Jules Verne's artist impression of underwater diving equipment, there were earlier versions. But still, it took science fiction, it took the great mind of a great sci-fi writer and movies to improve the design, to popularize the idea before we have modern-day diving equipment. But of course, science fiction is not just about improving design. It's also about predicting what the future may want, of creating this want. Because once we have an idea of how the end product looks like, we can define real problems and solve them with real technologies. Take, for example, Star Trek. Before the movies in 2009 onwards, Star Trek was a TV series in the 1960s. Now, apart from inspiring a whole generation of people to pursue engineering careers, Star Trek also inspired the invention of many devices we take for granted today. Take, for example, the cell phone. The communicator in Star Trek was the blueprint for the first flip phone, or the original clamshell model. Now, you may think that this technology is a bit outdated because of all the smartphones and touch screens that we have today, but Star Trek also had smart tablets. In the 1960s, the Trekkies were already using what they call personal access display devices, or in short, PAD. Now, the name of the devices in Star Trek also sounds very similar to many of the smart tablets that we have today. We have smartphones, we have smart tablets. The next product in line, smartwatches. In the 1940s, a comic character, Dick Tracy, was already communicating with members of the police force using two-way wrist radios. Now, in the 1960s, these two-way wrist radios got upgraded to two-way wrist TVs, video call function. Now, we don't see anyone making video calls with their smartphones nowadays, but it's not so hard to imagine mounting a camera on a smartphone to start making video calls. But this is not the future of communication, because this product is something we can expect maybe today or maybe tomorrow. So how does the future of communication look like? 2012, the movie Total Recall, implants were everywhere. Think about it, implants, literally handphones. Although it looks very cool to make a phone call using your hand, this design is probably not going to last very long because there's a serious design flaw. Do not underestimate the inconvenience of having to lift a hand to make a phone call. Why lift a hand when I can just think, focus, concentrate, and send a thought-based text message? The technology is not actually science fiction. Reading brainwaves or translating brainwaves into words is real technology that has been showcased in TED Talks at least 8 years ago. But if you find machines reading your mind a bit too invasive, or if you cannot imagine sending a thought-based text message, then maybe a visual interface will help. 1991, Terminator 2, Judgment Day, one of the most expensive movies ever made. Arnold Schwarzenegger, or the Terminator, was looking for clothes to wear, and he was scanning from person to person using this really futuristic display. 2014, Google acquired a patent which can apparently bring this Terminator display to its smart Google glasses. Now, if smart glasses do not fit into your fashion profile, if you don't think you look nice in smart glasses, then maybe smart contact lenses are your thing. Talk about the vision for the future. Superhuman vision, Terminator display, medical sensors, see in the dark can all be fitted into smart contact lenses, which are basically implants that you can just put in and take out at will. But of course, the future is not just about looking cool. It's also about moving mountains and making things fly. Avatar, James Cameron brought us a remarkable world beyond our imagination. It brought us the stunning and fascinating Hallelujah Mountains. Floating mountains that defy gravity, floating mountains so beautiful, it convinced China to rename the actual mountains in which the movie was shot to Avatar Hallelujah Mountains. Now, with such inspiration on such a grand scale and a bit of engineering, you can enjoy mini floating bonsais in the comfort of your own home. Among other things that have been predicted to have taken flight include flying cars. Apart from The Fifth Element, almost every other sci-fi movie in the past 50 years have predicted that our cars will be flying by now. Although we are behind time for flying cars, we're pretty much in time for self-driving ones, which opens up a whole new world of these product design possibilities. The whole design of a car will change, the whole context of a car will change. Do we still call a car if it doesn't need steering wheel, if it doesn't require a manual gear stick, if it doesn't require a foot brake? So when it comes to product design, really, one man's fiction is another man's engineering. Now, apart from consumer electronics, we can also find elements of sci-fi in synthetic biology, genetic engineering, augmented humans, artificial life forms. In Amazing Spider-Man 2, Dr. Connors, also known as the Lizard Man, was a good scientist turned bad guy. Now, Dr. Connors was missing an arm, which gave him great motivation to develop a serum that can regrow limbs and human tissue. The premise is that if lizards can regrow tails and starfishes can regrow arms, then certainly we can learn from the wonders of nature or reverse engineer nature and apply it to other creatures or even human beings. And this is actually not science fiction either, because in the labs, scientists have managed to a limited extent regrow the arms of rats. Others have made significant progress in growing organs from human cells. So instead of waiting for donors to supply organs in the very near future, it could be possible that hearts, lungs, kidneys, or even blood can be grown on demand. But if the situation arises and you cannot wait or will not wait for a bespoke, custom-made organ to be grown, why not consider printing it? We have 3D printing technologies that can print organs cell by cell. And if we are printing organs, why stick to the original design? Why not improve the design or customize it to our own liking? And if we are growing organs or printing organs, why not just clone ourselves, make identical versions of ourselves? 1993, Jurassic Park made us rethink the phrase, as dead as a dodo, or as dead as a dino, because the film brought back extinct dinosaurs. By recovering dinosaur blood ingested by a mosquito trapped in a stone, scientists in the movie extracted dinosaur DNA, re-engineered the giants, leading to a catastrophe. Well, fortunately, there was no catastrophe, and I don't see any dinosaurs running around today. 1996, Dolly the sheep was cloned from an adult cell of another sheep. Now, after Dolly, many animals were cloned, including other sheep, goats, cats, dogs, fishes, or even camels. And even more recently, a Chinese group in the beginning of this year claimed that they have successfully cloned monkeys. So what's next? But before we clone more sheep, monkeys, or even ourselves, maybe we should pause, take a step back and think exactly, do we know what we're doing? How much do we know about DNA? How much do we know about these genetic blocks of code that makes us us? Millions and billions of dollars have been poured into deciphering our genetic code. With the new knowledge, we can tell for certainty our genetic ancestry. We can infer family history of certain diseases and genetic conditions, and there's tremendous potential in understanding ourselves or discovering ourselves through our genomes. But already in 1997, the movie Gattaca was probing and asking questions about how new knowledge and how genetics will affect society. So apart from improving designs, apart from creating new ones, science fiction movies are also important in helping us think and reflect about the possible repercussions and consequences that new technologies may bring. Now, if you humor me and we speculate here, what if one day the genetic code gets cracked and suddenly all diseases are treatable, curable, or preventable? There's only one planet, resources are finite, so how do we consume less? Can we consume less by downsizing ourselves, making ourselves smaller? Halflings, hobbits, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. But what if even one planet is not enough? What if we need another planet for more resources? The movie Interstellar in 2014 predicted that artificial homes in space will have to become a reality. And our own real-life superhero Elon Musk made public his plans to make human beings a multi-planetary species. His first stop for colonization, Mars, which is really interesting because it will totally change the meaning of long-distance relationships. Well, if we are already going to the Mars, and if we have already been to Moon, why stop within our solar system? Why don't we go to galaxies far, far away? But nature has given us a speed limit, the speed of light. And as far as we know, nothing goes faster than the speed of light. So if it takes light 1 year to get from point A to point B, we cannot get to point B any sooner or faster than 1 year. And that makes space travel very challenging because the universe is very, very big. So if we do not have warping devices or wormholes, how do we overcome such physical distances for space travel? 2016, the movie Passengers, starring Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence, showed people in hibernation pods on a 120-year space journey. Now, apart from this movie, many sci-fi movies also suggested that freezing ourselves is key for space travel. And cryogenics is a field of science that studies how living bodies can be frozen and preserved. Now, although it's not very safe, I wouldn't recommend it, and it's not very stable, you can get yourself frozen today for a lot of money. Using these very few examples and in this very limited time, I hope I convince you to consider that the line between science fiction and science is very thin, and that there is a very thin line between magic and technology. I believe in magic, and I believe in technology, but I also believe that nothing is impossible, except that sometimes the impossible is very expensive. Expensive in terms of time, money, and resources. And the use of science fiction as an inspirational tool in the context of research is worth encouraging. So students, go and watch movies, go get inspired, go read a lot of books, go get inspired, or even better, go make your movies, your own movies, and go write books, go inspire others. Because be bold, think different. Thank you.